The glow of the first day had settled into a steady hum as Elian returned for his second evening at the Volkshochschule. The hallway was filled with the sounds of a dozen different languages, but as he stepped into his classroom, the familiar scent of chalkboard dust and strong coffee made him feel at home. He saw Jürgen, his instructor, carefully arranging a stack of handouts on the front desk. Elian realized that the first day was about orientation, but today, the real work of building his new life through language would truly begin. Before the lesson officially started, Elian took his seat and met a new classmate who had arrived late the night before. Her name was Thalita, a graphic designer who had recently moved from Brazil. They practiced the greeting Jürgen had taught them, "Schön dich kennenzulernen." Thalita laughed, admitting that the CH sound at the end of the words felt like a secret code she hadn't quite cracked yet. Elian smiled, feeling a sense of relief that he wasn't the only one struggling with the unfamiliar sounds. Jürgen tapped a marker against the whiteboard to gather everyone's attention. Today's challenge was the accusative case, the way a simple word like der transforms into den, depending on the action in a sentence. Jürgen drew a series of colorful boxes and arrows on the board, explaining the logic with patient, expressive hand gestures. He reminded the class that grammar was not just a set of rules, but the skeleton that would eventually hold up the flesh of their conversations. For the first practical exercise, Jürgen asked the students to work in pairs. Elian turned to Navin, and they began the task of describing the items in their bags using the new grammar rules. Elian pulled out a pen and concentrated hard. "Ich habe den Kugelschreiber," he said slowly, making sure to emphasize the new ending. Navin nodded encouragingly, checking his own notes before attempting to describe his notebook. The classroom was a low roar of students, helping each other through the linguistic maze. As the pairs practiced, Jürgen moved quietly around the room to offer guidance. He stopped at Thalita's desk, noticing her brow furrowed in concentration as she tried to restructure a sentence about her water bottle. Jürgen leaned down, speaking softly and pointing to a specific line in her workbook. He explained the connection between the verb and the article once more. Thalita's expression shifted from confusion to a bright, sudden clarity as she realized the pattern, and she quickly scribbled a correction. When the pause bell rang, the class moved to the small kitchenette for a break. Elian and Thalita stood by the tall window, looking out at the city lights of Germany. The street lights stretched out like a map of their new world. Thalita pulled a small bar of dark chocolate from her pocket and offered a piece to Elian. They spoke in a mix of simple German and English, sharing the stories of what brought them across the world to this specific city. Navin joined them a moment later, leaning against the wall with a mug of tea. He shared a funny story about a mistake he had made at the grocery store earlier that morning, confusing the word for cake with the word for cheese. The three of them laughed, the sound echoing in the hallway. Elian realized that while the grammar was difficult, the shared laughter was creating a community. They weren't just students. They were a team navigating the same mountain together. After the break, the class tackled a difficult listening exercise. Jürgen played a recording of a woman ordering various items at a local bakery. At first, the fast-paced German sounded like a blur of vowels to Elian. But as he listened for the second time, a phrase suddenly stood out. "Ich mochte ein Brot, bitte." He recognized the words and the structure. He felt a surge of triumph as he wrote the sentence down in his notebook. He was no longer just hearing noise, he was starting to hear meaning. As the clock approached 9, the lesson drew to a close. Jürgen began to erase the whiteboard, but he stopped to speak with Elian as he was packing his bag. Jürgen handed him a small sheet of paper containing a few extra practice sentences. "Gute Arbeit heute, Elian," he said with a nod of approval. Elian thanked him, feeling the weight of the books in his bag. This time, the weight didn't feel like a burden. It felt like progress he had earned through hard work. When Elian finally walked through his front door, the apartment was quiet. He found Mika still awake, tucked into bed and waiting for his nightly update. Elian sat on the edge of the bed and showed Mika his notebook filled with new words. "Heute habe ich viel gelernt," Elian whispered. Today I learned a lot. Mika didn't know all the words yet, but he patted Ilian's hand with a sleepy grin. Ilian realized that day 2 had taught him the most important lesson of all. The courage to keep showing up is the real key to the city.